This is the Book Deal Podcast,
where you will discover the inspiring stories behind your favourite books.
We interview seasoned and debut authors, as well as publishing industry professionals, to bring you the best tips and advice on how to get that elusive book deal.
So no matter what stage of writing you're at, we've got you covered. I'm Tina Strawn.
I'm Madeleine Cleary.
And I'm Natasha Rye.
And join us as we pull back the curtain of published authors.
One deal at a time. The Book Deal Podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on, and pays respect to their elders past, present, and emerging.
Hello, wonderful podcast friends. I'm Tina Strawn, and welcome to the summer season of the Book Deal Podcast for the 25-26 years. We have had a huge year made possible by your incredible support. But it's time for Madeleine, Natasha and I to have a little break. We have lots of writing to do, lots of gardening, lots of family time, and a fair bit of rest due to help us reset and prepare for another huge year in 2026. So over the next 5 weeks, we will be bringing you some of our most played eps of all time. Maybe they're ones you've not had a chance to listen to yet, or maybe you're listening for a second time and hearing new details you missed the first time. Either way, we hope you enjoy the eps and have a magical summer break or winter break for all of our Northern Hemisphere listeners. See you soon with new episodes of the Book Deal Podcast. Hi, Madeleine.
Hey, Tina. How you going?
Oh, really good. Really good, thanks. Excited to hear about your update for the last fortnight or so.
Oh, yes. I can't believe these fortnights come around so quickly. And really do you know, I learned something interesting, that fortnight is an Australian-British thing, that in the US they say every 2 weeks, they don't say a fortnight. There's a fun fact.
Seems like an excess amount of words.
I know. Fortnite is so convenient. Yes. Okay. So I have a very brief update. I received my proofread copy, which is very exciting. So the next month, I'm going to be going through my manuscript, trying to find any errors or issues with the typeset. It is so exciting to see the typeset though, because it looks like a real book now.
It does. It's very exciting.
It is so exciting.
And what do you think of it?
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, it's great. And so I went to Officeworks, printed out all 400 pages, got my ruler, got my pen, going through nice and slowly. So yeah, I've got a month to do this. I'm trying to take my time. I like to get things through really quickly, but I've decided this time I'm going to just take my time. So that's pretty much it.
It's a good length of time.
It is. I'm very lucky. We are quite ahead of schedule, which is good. So the copy edit didn't take as long as we expected. So we have a lot of time. So that's pretty much my book update. But what about you, Tina? You've been up to lots of things in the past fortnight.
I have. I've been doing fun stuff. You know, sometimes you have weeks or months when not much kind of happens. But this week, I went to the BSAB. It's BookLink's Story Arts Brisbane writing conference.
Oh, yep.
And I only got to go for one day, but that was with the workshop with Amy Kaufman and Peter Canavas, which was incredible. They both did half-day sessions. You know, I just don't think you can get enough writing advice sometimes. Just even, you know, Peter Canavas did a lot on just story structure, and just hearing someone else explain it in a particular way is like, oh, I didn't even consider that. Or even if you do it, knowing that you're on the right track, you know. Really
did you take lots of notes? Have you? So what was the key thing? Was there something that really stood out to you?
I think with Peter Canavas, I really enjoyed how practical he made it, because he writes a lot of middle grade as well, and just some of the little tips. You know, sometimes it's nice to put in like a saying that someone says, and that's not even middle grade. That's like, that can be all books, like a particular saying that someone says all the time. Sometimes a particular object that's just hanging around, but it's really special for someone.
So it makes all those little things unique to the individual character, rather than something that like, oh, my heart thumped. It could be like they pick their fingernails or something, you know, trying to make it unique. Is that lots of nice little suggestions like that. I thought was really I love that writing's a continuous learning journey, isn't it? We're always learning.
Yeah,
it's hard to, you know, I don't think anyone's at that expert. It's hard to call yourself an expert, I think, because there's always new ways to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then yesterday I got to help one of the Debut Crew 24 celebrate the launch of their new picture book. So it's called
Oh,
Like a Gannet. I'm going to show you how cute the front
oh, it's
is.
so
It's
cute. Look at the little
Like a
baby.
Gannet. Yeah. So that's by Kirsten Eland and illustrated
Hmm.
by Deb Hudson. And it was just really nice to go down and, visit another local-ish author and help them celebrate. So that was really fun. Had some
Oh, that's good. I
cupcakes.
love, I love a launch. I love a
Yeah.
book launch. It's so fun, isn't it?
So exciting. Yeah.
Yep.
But I wanted to talk to you,
Mm,
Madeline,
mm.
about
What's our theme? What are we talking about?
feedback, I think, when you
Oh,
receive
okay.
feedback. Because you get it through all various stages of
Mm,
writing. If you're just new and you're first putting it out into the world, and you can submit it to, competitions and get a bit of feedback. You can join a writers group and get some feedback. And
mm-hmm.
I think I want to talk to you about if you have some advice on how you think people should, deal with receiving feedback, because,
Mm-hmm.
not everybody, and as we know, you can ask 5 different people and you probably get 5 different responses back. But the reason why I want to bring it up is because I know that you received some feedback recently on one of your manuscripts.
One of my manuscripts that makes me sound
One of
so prolific.
your most recent manuscript, I
Yeah, yeah.
guess.
Oh, I love
Um,
feedback. I think do you like feedback? I love it. I get very excited.
yes, and I'm very open to it. But I can't
Yes.
say that I've had the feedback that you've had recently, because I don't write sex scenes in my books. I write middle
So
grade.
now, okay, I'm just going to warn listeners, if you've got small little kiddies in the car, maybe you want to turn this part down.
Yeah. So, it's sometimes, you open your feedback and it's with
Mm,
an open mind, and you take it
mm-hmm,
all on board, and you're
mm-hmm.
prepared for people to, be reading your innermost thoughts that you're
That's
putting on the
right.
page and getting back to you. But does it feel a little bit more personal when it's about a
A sex
sex
scene.
scene?
Absolutely. It's funny. Like I kept giggling, which
I'm
I'm like,
giggling now.
I know, isn't it funny? It's like, oh my gosh. Wow. Okay.
Mm.
So I'm working on my second book and I recently got some feedback on that. And and it was really, really helpful and useful feedback, which I'm going to take away and do. And this, I should say to listeners that this book, it's contemporary sort of domestic suspense, women's fiction book. And it's wonderful. And it's quite different to my historical fiction book. And so in one of the characters, she has this very wonderful sort of sexual experience. And and it's very true. The feedback I got was, while it's very tasteful, tasteful, not sure if that's how you want your sex scenes described. You could be more explicit here. It's, your own personal preference, of course. Perhaps, think about what you can do to spice things up a bit. And so I read it and I laughed, and I think I messaged you straight away. And so I was, as you do, I was having a glass of wine with mum on Friday night, and I told her about this advice. And I said to her, Mum, I absolutely pulled back on this sex scene because I thought about you reading it. She goes to me, we've got our wine, we're sitting in the sunshine. She goes, darling, she's like, don't worry about that. She's like, don't worry about me. You just put me out of your mind when you're writing. You just go for it. I was
Put me out of your mind when you're writing a sex scene. That's what you want. Thanks, Mum. I wasn't
like, well.
really.
And she's like, just tell me the page numbers and I'll skip over them. I'm like,
Bless
yes.
her.
And then my
Thanks.
dad's there. Dad's next to her having a wine, and Dad goes, oh, I can't wait for the mini series of this.
Oh no.
So I feel actually,
Uh-huh.
after having that conversation with
Mm.
mum, I
Oh,
feel a lot more confident to go forth and spice things up.
and you're
So
going to really spice it up now, aren't you?
I am. And so
Good.
I've messaged a couple of my girlfriends,
Mm.
and we're going to get together and we're going to have a bottle of wine.
Mm.
And we're going to work together and we're going to make this a bit of a fun night, and we'll flesh it out,
So to speak.
so to speak.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it's super
I'm
fun.
so
And randomly, this also came up in our debut crew. We started in our Discord writing, like asking lots of questions, and it came up naturally. It wasn't something I prompted.
Yeah, someone else had a question, didn't they?
And so I thought the advice was super cool. So if you are writing sex scenes, I thought some of this advice is really good. So I'm not going to name names from our debut crew. I'll keep it all anonymous. But the best advice is to not write sex scenes like you're writing an instruction manual. So saying tab A fits into slot B, and to focus instead on feelings and emotions. So you're always going to cringe when writing them. But focusing on the feelings and emotion, I think, is really important. So I was like, okay, that's really good advice. And then also things like figuring out what language characters use to talk about sex. So one character uses certain words that are very explicit and others a bit more shyer. So, focusing again on what they're feeling, then the physical, I think, is so focusing. And then I listened to this great podcast with Chris Neen about it. I've been doing my research. Like, this is such an A-type thing to do, doing research on how to write sex scenes. Focus on the body. So pick senses and describe those, right from like touch and smell rather than like physically what's happening, and slow everything down as well. So if, as a reader, what's about to happen, and so hold the reader back, like wait until the end. So just slowly go into that. Like the focus should be on the build up rather than the end. So there you go. There's my advice, and there's my top tip to all our listeners about how to write sex scenes. But if you have some advice for me, obviously not Tina, as Tina's writing middle grade.
I'm just sitting here cringing. Yeah.
You've gone red.
It's so funny though, because I found it really interesting that you say that, and other people who do write sex scenes say that they cringe when they're writing them. I didn't think that. I thought if you were writing sex scenes, you'd like really
getting into it
openly, just like confident in it. And
not at all.
So it's good to know that you cringe. Maybe one day when I venture into adult novels, I can sit there and cringe too, knowing that we all are cringing.
Is this on your agenda? Is this on your plan, your future plan? Writing
I don't have enough time. I've got so many other YA and middle grade that I need to write first.
YA actually does have sometimes sex scenes, so maybe you will need this. You might have to come back to this podcast one day, Tina.
I do have a bit of advice then. Yearn and burn. I remember those words specifically coming from Lisa Berryman, my publisher, because when I first met her, it was to discuss a YA that I had written, and she was like, in YA, it's all about the yearn and burn. Like, you don't really quite ever get there, but it's all about just yearning for it. So
I love that.
I do have a tip on that then.
Is that okay? We've got our 2 top tips then for how to write good sex scenes. And I know it's changed from receiving feedback to writing sex scenes, but I think that's okay.
That's okay. It's still good.
It's good. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed that.
The following interview is a little bit different to our interviews here on The Book Deal. Both Madeleine and myself will be interviewing our guest, Samuel Bernard, a literary agent with Zeitgeist Literary Agency. Samuel is also a freelance writer, book critic, and editor, to name just a few of the feathers in his cap. Madeleine and I are all about The Book Deal here and how we can help all aspiring authors sign the deal. So we knew interrogating a literary agent would provide many gems of knowledge to help authors. Samuel had so many golden tips that we have had to split this episode into 2 parts. In part 1 of our interview, we talk social media. We talk how to construct your pitch for the ultimate chance of success. We talk why the first 500 words of your manuscript can be the most important. We talk comparative titles and how to find them. And we get the hard truth on the benefits of having an agent. We hope you enjoy part 1 of this interview.
Welcome, Samuel, to the Book Deal podcast.
I'm very excited to be here. This is my 3rd podcast, and it's nerve-wracking every single time. You wouldn't think so, but I remember talking to some writers recently. When you're at a writers' festival, you're presenting on a panel or something like that, you kind of get nervous because it's live, but at least if you say something dumb, it's kind of gone. Whereas if you say something dumb on a podcast, it's there forever for
Mm-hmm.
everyone to see. So
Mm-hmm. And they can
yeah, so
play
you
it
get
over and over again.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. So
We'll
if I
go
can
easy on
say,
you.
don't quote me.
We're not gonna go easy on you, Samuel. Tina's gonna play a
Good,
bit of
good.
nice
I'm
cop, I'll play bad
I'm
cop.
the nice cop here. I'm softening the questions for
And
you, and
wait,
Madeline's
wait.
like, no, just ask it.
So if we've got a good cop and a bad cop, am I the criminal in this scenario? What's
Mm-hmm.
going on?
How this
Call it what
works.
you will.
All right. So, in all seriousness, we're very, very excited to have you on the podcast, Samuel. We've got lots and lots of questions prepared. But we also thought, like, given we're all about book deals, obviously here on the pod, that we should also talk to someone like yourself, because you are, we're guessing, someone that spends a lot of time thinking and working on book deals.
Yeah, sure do. Yeah.
All right. So, Tina.
So I'm going to take it away with our first question, Samuel. With a little bit about yourself, I guess a little bit of your background. So can you tell us about your journey to becoming a literary agent? Is it something that you've always wanted to do? Yeah, what attracted you to this industry?
Yeah. It's a good question, because I guess it's one of those jobs that you don't go to university for. Like it's not law or education or health, nursing, that kind of stuff. There's only about, 20 odd agents in Australia. So, it's not something that you overly prepare for, I guess. But I've always loved books, reading, writing since I was a kid. I fell in love with the idea of writers and publishing very early on, kind of romanticized the industry a little bit. And my dad certainly instilled writing and reading in me from a very young age. My early favorite authors were not maybe who you'd think. People like Ernest Hemingway, Margaret Atwood, and Aldous Huxley, Edgar Allan Poe, probably books that a kid wouldn't generally read. So it's always been a passion. But I guess as I approach the end of high school, I've received some of the best advice I think I've been given from my mum, which was, she convinced me to go and do an education degree, a teaching degree. My parents were self-employed growing up when I was growing up, so I think the stability that came with that, was a great draw. The holidays are great, and she thought I'd have a knack for it. So, and teaching was really good to me, but I always felt like I wanted more, and kept coming back to the passion of creative writing in the books industry. So after a number of years of teaching, I decided to upskill. I went and did a master's of writing. I loved it, so much so that I decided to continue my study into a PhD at Monash Uni. And the PhD was in creative writing, and it was amazing. My supervisor and I had some incredible conversations, discussions, analysis of work, and I also got this opportunity to be an editor for the Verge Literary Journal, which is published by Monash University Publishing. And going through that process of looking at pitches from authors trying to get into the journal, meeting with authors and talking about their stories, then proceeding to do editorial work right up to the sort of publication process. And going through that process, I think, really sparked something in me. So a little while into the PhD, I decided that academia was not going to be a true passion of mine and where I really wanted to go. I just really wanted to work with books, with authors, with publishers. So around the time I finished my Masters of Writing, I got a gig writing for Good Reading Magazine, which soon followed with writing features. And now I've got an opinion column with them each month, which is a lot of fun. I get to, choose some really interesting topics to cover. And then somehow, my reviews got the attention of Caroline Overington, who's the literary editor at The Australian. She reached out to me. I thought for sure I was getting catfished, because she DM'd me on Instagram, and I was like, yeah, okay, this is totally not her. This is some random person who's just messing with me. But yeah, she offered me a monthly gig writing the notable books column for the Weekend Australian and doing some long form reviews. And I've been doing that for almost 3 years. So kind of was doing that during my PhD study and doing a little bit of that writing on the side, but you definitely can't make a full-time living from being a critic, unfortunately. So I explored more avenues in the industry. I'd done a little bit of work in with a tech company, actually, in PR and publicity. So I had some meetings with some targeted publishers for a PR role. But the agenting avenue just looked like a complete package to me. Like you could get into the creative writing, you can work with publishers as well as authors. You're looking at the editorial stuff. So I guess that's what drew me into agenting. So again, I kind of targeted a couple of agencies that I really respected, and I met with the director of Zeitgeist, and the rest is history. There's a long history of my life, isn't it?
No, it's great. Yeah, and it's so relevant. Every step of the way, everything that you've done really has led to now, hasn't it? Like it's all been very relevant. Yeah, that's interesting. And that story about getting a DM in your Insta is pretty incredible. But I have heard of similar stories with authors, even of a publisher or an agent DMing them on Insta. So it seems like a bit of a fairy tale, but it does seem to happen, doesn't it?
And that's just, you just got to put yourself out there and have a bit of fun with it all in the process. But I've never been big on selling myself and being a networker and all that kind of stuff. But it opens doors. And I made the decision a while back that I would have an Instagram sort of for my writing career, and obviously that helped me a lot. So yeah.
Can I ask a related question to that, actually, about social media?
Yeah, of course.
It's been a great segue straight into that, because it's a question that a lot of authors and aspiring authors do ask a lot or think about a lot. I don't. A few years ago when I was, listening to all the podcasts and everything that I could about writing and how to get published, and a lot of them were American-based ones, to be honest, and a lot of them were like, if you don't have a social media following or a platform, like, we're probably not even going to look at you.
Right.
But I know that's a very different, I know now that it's very different, but at the time when I was just starting to really delve into it, just being like, well, I might as well just give up. What's the point? But I know it's very different over here in Australia. But there is still a little bit of, I hear both sides. One is, don't worry about it. You don't need any social media or any platform. It's, publishers and agents aren't really looking at it. But I did hear a publisher from a very big house here in Australia at a conference a couple of months ago say that they actually do. I heard two of them actually. One say, after we read your stuff and we like it, we look at your socials.
Yeah.
And I guess
do a bit of vetting.
Yeah, and there's probably nothing wrong with that, because if to a degree, I mean, people do it when you apply for a job.
Yeah, right? That's right.
Like, they go and find you, and if you're doing anything,
strange,
crazy, that doesn't align with their business, shall we say?
Yes.
Then that's probably fair enough. But and another one say something about, actually they have the ability to look at your account and see how active you are, like how much you're liking other people's pages or commenting, or I don't know.
I'm not that tech savvy.
That wrong. I know, I don't know, but it was really like they had the ability to see your amount of time that you're spending and engaging on that platform.
Right.
But then I've heard other people say it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? What advice can you give for aspiring authors on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic because of BookTok and Bookstagram and how big books can really take off on all those platforms. So it's a reality, I guess, in our modern world that is something to consider. If I'm looking and I'm considering taking on a manuscript, I will look them up, the same thing, just to sort of see what their presence is like. And, someone who might have 200,000 followers, it is going to grab your attention a little bit because you've obviously got a really rich platform there, particularly if it's Bookstagram or BookTok, because the people following you are likely to be readers and buyers of your book. So you're definitely taken into account, but I would not if I didn't find, and this actually often happens, if I'm considering a manuscript, I look up their Instagram, they don't have one, or I can't find them or whatever. It certainly isn't like, oh, put them to the side. That's absolutely not true at all. But I get the vetting part of it, where you're kind of looking up to sort of see what their vibe is, whether, and that's not just in our modern world today, where you've got to look into those things, because you're right, they're going to represent your brand as a publisher or as an agency or something. But also just to sort of see if it's someone that you could dig working with, because as an agent and author, you have a kind of a special relationship, in that your publishers can sometimes come and go, and there is a lot of movement between publishing houses with different publishers and stuff. So it's not uncommon. But your agent tends to stick around. So you want to be able to get on with someone. So there's that kind of aspect to it too, is when I'm looking at whether I want to work with someone or not. But more often than not, it certainly doesn't have a decisive factor when I'm weighing everything up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a relationship, right? Like you said, it's vetting them, and that's what people do now, even in actual relationships. When they go and when they meet someone for the first time, it's like the first thing, and they're interested in. It's the first thing they do, right? Is probably check out their socials, check out what they're doing, because it does give you a bit of a background, doesn't it, to them?
Definitely, yeah.
So we're actually really interested to know more about your role as an agent with Zeitgeist, and you've been with Zeitgeist now for almost a year, or over a year now.
Yeah, I think maybe 14 or 15 months now, I think.
Yeah. So you've had more than 365 days, I suppose, as a literary agent. Have all of those days looked the same, or can you tell us a little bit about what an average day looks like in a literary agent life?
Yeah, it's entirely different every single day. I think particularly for me, because I have a few different roles in the industry. So, my day might look very different to other agents as well. But being a critic, a columnist, I'm now judging the Australian Literary Prize, and then of course agenting. So, yeah, no day is the same. There's the not so glamorous side of being an agent, and that's like the administration stuff. And every role and every job has that. It's not the fantasy you grow up believing and of any job, but there's always the admin side. But generally speaking, I guess I love that I get paid to read, and that's how I like to see what I do. I mean, I'm going to be reading regardless, probably as much as I do now. So I guess to make an income from that is pretty special. I also love like my Zoom meetings, which are most days that I get to have. And I don't think a lot of people in Australia would share that love. But, I get to Zoom with authors, publishers, producers, directors, talking about books. And that's one of the coolest parts of my job. So, that's part of my day to day as well. And some days I need to focus on reading of actual manuscripts for my authors, or prospective authors. Some days I'm focusing on just pitches that have come through. Some days it's entirely focused on editing a manuscript that I've taken on and might be about to go out to publishers. So and then of course like reading and writing for the Weekend Australian and writing my opinion columns, and like every day is very different. But I guess my sort of day is I'll make sure I prioritize what the next thing is on my list, rather than spreading it out. But I think, my day might look very different to, other agents and other people in publishing for sure.
And so when you're, you obviously have to do so much reading. Do you read the full submissions when they come through the slush pile? Do you read the full, or do you get a sense straight away in the first few pages? Because since you do so much reading, you must get a sense of the vibe of the book pretty quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. When we're talking about, I guess, the whole submission at Zeitgeist, we have a submissions guideline on our website. So, for example, we don't have a cover letter or anything like that. We basically ask for things like, what's the title, obviously, what's the genre of work, what's your current word count, which can also be a deciding factor. I had a submission not that long ago that was 250,000 words.
Oh, goodness. And
I
just for
was,
context, a normal average book would be what, something like 80 to 100,000, would you say, adult
yeah,
fiction?
yeah, most publishers are looking for 70 or 80 ideally, but
Mhm.
up to 100 would be the max. So ridiculously long, and that plays a factor as well, because publishers, like that, the printing cost of that alone is very off-putting for a lot of publishers. So yeah, so those sort of flags come up pretty early. But in saying that, maybe it's the greatest 250,000 words ever written. So I definitely don't stop there. We've got then parts that are a 30-word elevator pitch, a 200-word synopsis, your bio, comparative titles, and then we ask for the first 500 words of a manuscript. So I guess to answer your question, yes, I definitely read the whole submission. I think it's critical because you just never know what might slip through. Um, yeah, but yeah, certainly make a definitive effort to get through it, no matter what,
Yeah.
before moving on.
How do you grab your attention in 500 words?
Yeah, I think I've been well trained for this, because when I was the editor for the Verge Literary Journal, that's a journal of short stories. So to get your attention very quickly, you need to have a bit of a splash to start off with. And I think, I work, I guess, in the commercial field quite a bit. So I'm looking for 500 words that grabs me somehow. There's something in there that is getting my attention, that is jumping out at me. It could be something really interesting to do with your character. It could be your opening line, even. I've had submissions that I've asked for full manuscripts where that opening line is just, okay, yep, game on. So 500 words isn't much, but I do believe that it's enough for, particularly when you put it next to a synopsis, the elevator pitch, things like that as well. It's not just 500 words that you take into account, but those first 500 words are pretty critical. Even like walking around bookshops and stuff like that, the amount of people you see who open up that first page and just read the first page, they're making a decision about whether they're going to buy that book or not. The style, the energy, something that's just grabbed your attention. Something about it, you need to grab people's attention. So I find that 500 words is a pretty good little sweet spot.
Well, that's a good top tip then for all our listeners who are submitting. Work on your first 500 words. Nail it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's a really good tip. Samuel, just on that, you're saying before you mentioned comparative titles.
Mm.
That was something I struggled with a lot when I was first starting to write pitches and query letters, and understanding what that actually meant. And yeah, continually sort of flitted between, I have to find something that's exactly the same. I'm like, but I don't want something that's exactly the same. And yeah, it was hard to understand what that means, and because it's not necessarily saying what's something that's exactly the same, but something that is a similar style or has a similar meaning or appeals to a similar audience. Can you give us some advice there on what's a good way to, what does that actually mean, a comparative title, and what's a good way of finding a comparative title?
And
Yeah,
how important is it as well? Because I've heard that it's quite important to think through this.
it is important, not only for an agent, but publishers. One of the major things that they need to consider when they're deciding whether to take on a manuscript and publish it into the world is where it sits on a shelf, in a bookshop, in a library, whatever. That's so critical for them to be able to market it. And I'm not a marketer. I've never worked in sales or anything like that, so I don't know the intricacies of that. But it is something that is often discussed: is where, who's the buyer of this book, who's buying this book, where are we listing it, what books is it sitting next to on a bookshelf. Now you guys can't see my bookshelves, but I'm very painful in how I arrange my books. And so I can only imagine what it's like for a bookstore to be thinking about, if someone's been drawn to an area, let's say Rachel Johns is sitting on the bookshelf, who is surrounding her there? Like those are the sort of questions that you really need to consider. And nobody is expecting everyone to know all books and have read everything. And, I read heaps. But even there's gaps in my knowledge. I often see comparative titles and I'm like, oh, never heard of that. But you Google it, you look it up, you see what the vibe is, you see what the synopsis is, and you start to get a bit of a sense as to what they're trying to achieve with it. So it is a bit of an art, and I do place a lot of importance on it, because, from an agent's perspective, because we need that information then to be able to position it and be able to then, I guess, pitch that particular place on a bookshelf to the publisher so they can market it. They know exactly how to do that.
And how do you feel about people using a book and a movie or a show or a person, like, or a vibe or like an
Oh,
industry? Like,
I've
it's
had I've had TV shows and films before, and I'm into it because I'm the same. When I'm talking about some of my favorite, um, maybe historical novels, I draw in some parts of different TV shows, Band of Brothers, stuff like that I absolutely adore. When I'm trying to like round out my idea of what's good. So I'm here for that. I've not come across like people or vibes in that sense. So yeah, I'm not sure how I'd react to that. But I guess it's all kind of like a bit of a mood board in a sense, isn't it? Like you are just trying to get a grasp on what they're trying to achieve and where they're trying to position the work. So I mean, if you send it through and it makes sense to me, then all power to you.
can I confess that I used a person in a book then for
Oh,
mine?
You have to
did
tell
I
us
say
what.
something bad about it?
No, no, it wasn't a setup, I promise. Yeah, I can. Do you want me to tell you what it is? It
Please, yeah,
was. I
pitch
don't know
me.
if you know. I did not sign up for an online recorded pitch today. Okay, but
Oh,
it
this is
already.
all a ruse. This whole podcast is a ruse.
No, it's already signed and it's okay. So it's
Good,
so
good.
so this was for my series that comes out next year. So it's middle grade and it's about a girl who lives in a zoo with her family. So my pitch was if Bindi Irwin met Juliet Nearly a Vet, which is a book series for kids, then you get
Yeah.
Nika Wilder, who's the main character.
Oh,
In,
see, I like that. Yeah, that works for me. Yeah. And it is such, I can totally see the benefit of that because it is like drawing a mood board, isn't it? It's trying to get different elements from popular culture that we all understand, we can all get on the same page. And that's exactly what you just did. So yeah, I'm here for it.
Oh,
well, it was successful for those of you out there that are thinking of it,
That's very true.
because
Yeah,
it gives the vibe, right? It gives the scenario. Everyone knows who that person is, and you've already got a mental image in your head. So, yeah, maybe
absolutely.
thinking outside the box. That's my top tip for today.
Yeah, I love
Think
that.
outside the box with your comparative titles.
Yeah. Now I'm going to get an
I,
influx in
I
this,
take
right?
I take no responsibility for what happens after this with people's comparative titles. But thank you for that. That was really interesting and really important conversation. Um, so just moving on to agents and in Australia, and I mentioned before how different it is between other countries, especially the States. And we know that in the States and in the UK, if you don't have an agent, you can't get in front of publishers. There's just no way of doing it. We have a little bit more opportunity over here to do it without an agent.
Mm.
And so being traditionally published is still possible in Australia
Mm.
without an agent. But can you tell us what are the benefits of having an agent?
Yeah, like everything you've just said is absolutely true. In Australia, we do differ from places like America, where publishers won't look at anything without an agent, any unsolicited manuscripts, as many people would know. Um, but it is still incredibly useful to have an agent in Australia. I actually get quite a number of people who have submitted to a publishing house when they've opened their submissions and say, I've actually got a contract now. I am freaking out. I have no idea what to do. Please help me. Um, so I guess once it comes to that point, so even if you've gone through the process, you've gotten that far without an agent, that's not sort of where the agents would stop their work anyway, you know. So the ongoing relationship of having that professional in the industry with the knowledge of what works, you know, through the next book, the editorial work for the next book, the ideas, having a sounding board to bounce off. All those things are incredibly important, but also like the actual, when it comes down to the contract, which a lot of people wouldn't have the expertise for. So you don't know if you're getting taken for a ride or not. Now, I don't mean that against our publishing houses in Australia, because they're very, very well respected, and I know them all personally. They're all great people. So I can't imagine a scenario where they do that. But ultimately, it's a business, and you know, even down to world rights and screen rights and all that kind of stuff, people are a bit lost as to what they should do with that. So I think even in those positions where someone has got a contract in front of them, it can be really beneficial then to get an agent on board. But I guess even without that, well, let me put it this way: publishers basically, you know, take pitches from agents above all others. So if they've got a submission opening, they're all sitting there, sure, and they're going to be looked at by somebody. But agents have that direct line to all the publishers in Australia. You know, I know them personally. I can pick up the phone and talk to them. I can send them an email directly with a pitch. And I know that even at writers' festivals, publishers have said this, that when they get an email from an agent, like that's kind of, they'll stop and take notice. You know, it goes to the top of their list of things to look at. And I think that's because an agent generally has done a lot of the heavy lifting for the publisher at that point. You know, they've scoured the submission slush piles, as they call it, and they've picked out the diamonds. They might have done some editorial work to clean it up and polish it up a little bit. You know, so not only that, but agents, you know, have that expertise on the contract law around all that kind of stuff. They can play, you guys are talking about good cop, bad cop before. The agent can play good cop, bad cop with a publisher. You know, we don't want the author to have those really tough conversations. Let's say if it's getting published and the cover art comes in and it is just not what the author wanted at all. You know, the agent can play that bad cop kind of thing and go into bat for them. So, you know, there's tons of different reasons why people would go for agents rather than not. And I think when it boils down to it, it's expertise and it's the network of contacts that they have in the industry.
Mm. Just on what you were saying, Samuel, about someone who is approached by a publisher and then emails you and says, I don't know what to do. They're not with your agency, but they're suddenly in this position. And that actually happened to me. So I was very fortunate, didn't have an agent, but I had multiple offers for my book. And I remember some people at the time saying to me, oh, you should go and reach out to some agents and they can sort of help you. I said, but I've already got like the offer. Like I'll then have to give, isn't it like 15% as part of the contract? And but reflecting on it, I think there's lots of that. Would you receive that email and want to help that person, like engage that person, or is that okay?
Yeah, 100%. And you know, this actually happens to me moderately frequently. And sometimes I take them on, sometimes I don't. You know, I'm not the sort of agent who's going to be like, oh, you've got a contract on offer. That's easy money for me. I'm going to do it, and then kind of kick back. You know, like that's not my vibe at all. I really want to build a strong list of authors who I'm dedicated to, who I have really good communication with, who I'm supporting their careers. And also in sort of the more commercial space. So I've had quite a few people reach out who are more literary. And, you know, while I love literary work, it's probably not where I'm kind of building my list around. I'm sort of more focused on the commercial side. So I've spent hours on the phone just talking them through how to negotiate that contract and support them. You know, if someone reaches out to me in that position, I want to help out in some way, even if I don't take them on. But in your case, if you're saying you had multiple offers, then an agent could definitely have helped you in that scenario, because we sometimes go to auction, and it can drive up the price of an advance, and it's not always about the money, but when you do push that advance up a little bit for your book, you start to get the publisher in a position where they're like, oh, we paid a lot of money for this. Now we need to back it. We need to put in the marketing, the sales. We need this book to be a bestseller. So you kind of get into a position there where you're actually getting the publisher to back it even more so. So there's a multitude of different reasons why that would be beneficial when you're in that position. But more often than not, I think I get people who reach out because they're just like, help, I have no idea. I don't want to engage a lawyer to look at this contract because lawyers are crazy expensive. And, they don't know maybe much about the books industry and books contracts and stuff like that. So, I think if you're in that position, it's probably good to reach out, if not just to pick up the phone and have a conversation about where to go next.
What does your dream author look like, who's either submitting or pitching to you an event? Like what are you looking for at the moment?
Yeah. So with Zeitgeist, there's 4 agents with Zeitgeist currently. So there's 2 based in Sydney. One is the director of Zeitgeist in Australia, that's Madeleine Oldfield, and then there's me. And then we've got an office in Brussels and London as well, who deal with obviously European rights deals, UK, US, all that kind of stuff as well. So why I tell you that is because Benithan, as our director, does a lot in the literary world. He does quite a bit in memoir and nonfiction as well. So I think when I came on board, he was kind of, I guess, pushing me in a position where commercial was a bit more focused, so that between us we can cover the industry a little bit more detail. So like I love crime, I love thrillers, historical fiction. I've got people on my list that are romance writers. I love some commercial women's fiction. I just sold a book that's going to be coming out in early 2026 in commercial women's. It's fantastic. Again, hasn't been announced yet, so I can't go into too much detail. And I sold a romantasy recently, which is kind of a really hot genre at the moment. And then I also represent people like James Phelps, who's one of Australia's best-selling non-fiction writers. So I think in general, for me, anything with a commercial reach is probably where I'm sitting at the moment and what I've got in my crosshairs.
And what are some of the ways that aspiring writers can reach out to you? So obviously we've talked about the site Zeitgeist submission, but are there other ways that they can engage you?
Yeah, at risk of having a flooded DM on Instagram, I do have quite a few people that reach out, and some, like I'm always, I feel like one of my big, I don't know how to put it, like I really enjoy being accessible. I don't like having bad communication. I feel like I'm a good communicator in a sense, without sounding cocky, but I like that. I want to be accessible, even if it's for information. If someone's wants to reach out, just ask a question. It might take me a little bit of time to get back to them, but I want to. So yeah, DMs, maybe. Might put that one on ice, but no, it's fine. Obviously, our submissions folder is certainly the official place. We've closed those off for the moment, but it's not long until they will reopen. And then I've got, I often go, I'm always at writers' festivals and stuff like that. And I often have people come up and ask me questions after panels or pitching events that happen at festivals. I did Bad Crime Writers Festival last year, Brisbane Writers Festival, appearing at the upcoming Sunshine Coast Hinterland Writers Festival. So all those sorts of times as well, it's good to look out for those, because I certainly have some really good detailed conversations with people face to face about their ideas and what they're up to.
Well, that's great. And your name has been thrown up quite a few times, actually, Samuel, about how accessible you are. So I think that's
Oh,
wonderful.
that's
To
good
be
feedback.
to be so accessible in the industry, I think is wonderful. So
So
Oh, that's nice.
we won't edit out the bit about sending him in Instagram DM, everyone.
Well, we talked about social media and how important it is, so I can't be contradictory to that.
um,
Okay.
should we do our rapid fire, Tina?
Yeah, let's do our rapid fire questions. All right, we'll see how rapidly we can actually get through these
Oh,
because
okay.
there's
So
lots to chat about.
this means I've got to shut up and just keep the answers short. I like it.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
we should explain what this is. So this is a little segment that we thought we'd introduce because we put it out there to our Instagram followers. Again, Insta, to see if there are any questions that listeners would have for a secret literary agent. So we didn't name you. We got quite a lot of responses. So in order to try and get through as much as we can, we thought we'll just focus on rapid fire responses as much as we can. And so we'll see how we go. All of
Love
these
it.
are anonymous as well. So we've had lots of candid kind of questions.
Okay. Scary.
All right, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, the first one. Would you ever take on a client who only has a draft and not a full manuscript? It also says in brackets asking for a friend. Did you write that, Madeleine, or is that?
That was from the listener asking for a friend, lol.
Oh, okay. Um, Short answer. I'll try and keep these short, considering it's rapid fire. The short answer is probably not, unless maybe your name is Trent Dalton or Rachel Johns or something like that. Yeah, I think when it comes to an agent or putting it out to a publisher, you really want to put your best foot forward. 99 times out of 100, that means it needs to be a completed and clean manuscript.
And what does clean mean? Because I think a lot of people probably, it's very tempting. They finish their first draft and want to send it off straight away because they're so excited.
Yeah. It does happen. I would advise against. It's one of those things where, if a writer comes to me, it's clear that it's a first draft. There's a lot of errors, like there's a few plot holes, that kind of stuff. And even if the idea is pretty good, the chances are I'm going to be like, there's just too much work to be done yet. And I do like the editorial side, but there's a certain cutoff for that because some manuscripts do come to me that need a lot of work. So yeah, I think that you need to keep that in mind when you're starting to approach agents, because if you come to me and I've read it and then I see your name come up a few weeks later and go, oh, I've had another crack at it, it's hard to get that agent or publisher's attention again. It's tough to go back to them a second time and say, oh, I've worked on it, because that credibility might not be there.
This flows on to the next listener question. Should you employ a professional editor to edit your manuscript before querying?
No, not at all. I mean, it can't hurt. There's, certainly shows your dedication to getting your work out there. And to have a pair of trained eyes reading over it is never a bad thing. But yeah, no, it definitely doesn't need to be professionally edited, no.
Okay, so next one is, do you just, and we may have covered this, do you just read the cover letter or do you read the whole submission?
Oh yeah. No, so definitely get through the whole submission. That's if I'm not loving aspects of the elevator pitch or anything like that, those are easily adapted. And if I miss out on that first 500 words that are just awesome, then yeah, FOMO.
How does timing play a big role in your decision to offer representation? And I'm guessing that could be you've just signed someone who's a, certain genre, historical fiction or romantasy, and then someone else provides the same thing shortly after. How much does a role timing play?
Yeah, timing is so critical, and it's probably not something that I ultimately really thought of before actually becoming an agent. And often, this plays into the idea that if you get rejected by an agent or a publisher, it might have nothing to do with your writing ability. Timing is so critical. For example, director of Zeitgeist Benithan, is completely closed off right now to new authors. He's just far too busy with his list to take anyone on new. So, if someone reached out to him, it would be a simple no, just because he's just completely overwhelmed right now. So, like that's kind of part of that timing. But as you alluded to, like you might have written the best horror novel of all time, but publishers aren't buying it at that time. It's not in vogue at that time. So whereas romantasy, like that could grab someone's attention very quickly. So yeah, I think that's that all those aspects play a really big part in timing. And don't fret if you get a rejection because of something like that. It doesn't mean that you're a bad writer and it won't get published. It just could be timing.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm actually going to jump to a related question on the list on trends. Should authors then, if they're looking at timing and being the next thing, should we be writing to trends?
I would, my personal opinion is that is never a great strategy. You need to write a book that you want to write. If you love writing literary fiction and then you suddenly jumping on the romantasy bandwagon, you might fall off that wagon pretty damn quickly. The old saying is write what you know, but more so I think write what you enjoy, because your passion burns through your pages and that's what the reader wants to see.
Is romantasy going to stay, do you think?
I was having this conversation this morning. In fact, I spoke to one of my authors who writes romantasy, and I can't see it as being a fad whatsoever. I can't see it going anywhere. People have been reading fantasy for decades, if not centuries, and romance is on a massive upward trend in our country. So you combine those things, and what's not to love? It's just a combination of romance, which people love, and fantasy, which has always been a perennial seller. So I don't think it's going away.
And I'm just going to add that I was a Sarah J. Maas fan before she was SJM, the legend. And I even have an email trail with SJM going back to like a long time ago, saying how much I loved her books and when I was a bookseller. So I can post that up as proof that I was...
You were early trendsetter.
Early trendsetter.
Love it.
Thank you. That was really really insightful. I agree. Romantasy's already been around for a little while, hasn't it? So it just
that's true.
To be going from strength to strength. So speaking of romantasy as a genre, it's important to identify a genre when you're querying agents. What if you are straddling two different genres? If it crosses two genres, do you mush it together like romantasy, or if it's too tricky, do you just need to pick one or the other? And I'm just going to add on to that. Do you have any advice for people on how to work out what their genre is?
Yeah, I guess, well, to answer that final part of the question first, the telltale giveaway is your tropes, and what tropes you're sort of following throughout your book. And that's really important because, as we talked about before, publishers are looking for where this book sits on a shelf and how they're going to market a certain book. So that is actually quite critical. That, if it's romance, you've got your enemy to lovers trope, like that kind of stuff. So that's actually really important. As for the crosses over two genres, like that's a deep question that we could talk about for hours, I think. It probably comes down to each book and what elements are in there, what tropes are being used, all that kind of stuff. It's certainly coming, it comes down to each individual manuscript. I think that's really important. So we probably can't just put out a blanket, no, don't do this, or yes, do this. But my advice would simply be, I guess, if it can still find its way to a section of the bookshelf next to similar authors, then you should be okay. Some of the best books that I've ever read cross genres at times and play with those sorts of things creatively. But there is an art to it. And so I guess it comes down to each manuscript on its own merit kind of thing.
And maybe that's where the comparative titles can help with
Mm.
showing where it could sit or giving an example of two genres that are working together, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Okay, so this is a bit of a sad question. What happens, just like in all relationships, what happens if a author and an agent break up?
Oh, divorce papers.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this
You
is
unfriend them on Insta. Is that what you do?
yeah, you joke, but I've heard this actually
Oh,
happening. Yeah.
okay.
So it's never actually happened to me, but I have actually had authors come to me after one of these breakups. But I haven't had anyone leave me, which is good so far, touch wood. Um, but the short answer is, I guess, like there's contracts involved, and so it can be a little bit messy. That agent has done work on your previous books, have found it the right home, have done some editorial and all that kind of stuff. So royalties and all that kind of thing stay with that agent for that particular project. But sometimes it's as simple as, okay, this relationship has not worked out, which is fine. Not all relationships work out, as we know, and so they're out there shopping for a new one. I guess it's just important to be aware that once you sign that contract with a publisher, same goes for a publisher. All those rights are with those people under contract still, but that certainly doesn't affect you moving forward to a new agent or a new publisher.
Mhm. Um, so, do you have any advice for authors who have submitted to an agent and been rejected for whatever reason? Can they try again with the same manuscript if they've made substantial changes? And if so, how long in between would be suitable?
I guess that's up to each agent. For me personally, like there's no hard and fast rule around that sort of stuff. I have certainly told some authors that the manuscript might need some work, and maybe at that particular time, I didn't have the time to dedicate that amount of work to one manuscript. But if they go away, do some development, I like the idea, the elevator pitch was on, all that kind of stuff, then I'm happy to have another look at it down the track. But I would say generally you would really only go back to the same agent if they've kind of invited you to resubmit in the future. That would probably be my advice around that.
No, that's a
Yeah.
good one. I'm jumping back to trends. What do you think will be the next big trend in the market?
Oh, yeah. Actually, interestingly, I've been hearing quite a bit about horror being on its way back. Um, that's from Australian publishers and industry talk and that kind of stuff. But also in foreign markets. I was actually at the International Publishers Conference in Sydney in May this year. And some of the big European publishers were talking up horror. One even said, and I'm paraphrasing, and I think it was something like, give me blood, give me guts, give me gore. Murder is good, but serial killers are best. Um, so
Oh,
horror
goodness.
could well be on its way back. And actually, at this year's Brisbane Writers Festival, I was on a panel called "What Publishers Want," and I was asked this question. And I kind of started talking about how the pendulum swings away and then comes back and that kind of stuff with publishing. And post COVID, we really swung away from the dark themes and the really dark novels in our society, and so horror was not going well. Cozy crime came into its own, had a little really good purple patch. Lighthearted fiction, humor, all doing really well. But I don't know. I had this problem with the pendulum just going, like, being really rudimentary backward and forward. So I kind of compared it to granddad's balls, where they just kind of swing around. I don't think I'll be invited back to the Prison Writers Festival after that, but it's kind of true because, like, it's not just one side to the other; it's all over the shop. So Granddad's balls start to flop around a little bit and
Unpredictable what they do, right? Yeah.
unpredictable,
Okay.
exactly. So yeah, maybe not back at the Brisbane Writers Festival for that, but yeah. So I think for me, from what I'm hearing, I think those darker, maybe Australian Gothic horror, that kind of thing, might well be on its way back.
Awesome.
Interesting.
Mm.
Normally, well, I don't know if you've seen Samuel, but normally on our Insta, about a week after we do a podcast, we put up like a quote that we really liked from the
Oh God.
podcast.
Oh
So I'm
God.
just thinking, Madeline, can you just note that
Yes.
note this one for our Insta
Granddad's
just to
balls.
promote? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no. Why did I bring that up? I was actually really regretting it after the Brisbane Writers Festival. And I had authors coming up to me in the green room going like, oh, I loved what you said about the Granddad's balls. And I was like, oh God, I should not have said that. And then I've just brought it back up again. Like,
When it's recorded.
yeah. Oh God, yeah, now it's recorded.
The
Game over.
pendulum. Oh my gosh, I love
Well,
this.
yes, we'll use it as our quote for promo, and we'll just watch the listens just
Yeah.
spike. I
Oh
reckon.
God, yeah.
Oh no. Okay, back more serious.
Serious,
Back to it.
serious, yes.
Couple just couple more questions to go. How can you tell us, how does the agent author relationship work after the book deal, when there is also a publisher in the relationship too?
A threesome. Oh my
This
gosh, this
relationship.
episode. It's a threesome. We're
It's
talking
fallen off
serial
its train,
killers,
yeah.
granddad's balls, threesomes. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's one where the agent kind of has to step away a little bit more at that point. So pre-selling the rights to the book to a publisher, for me as an agent, I like to work pretty hands-on. I like to do a lot of editorial, make sure that it's to a really good place that I think will work in the market well. And then once it's sold, it is a little bit of handing over the reins to the publisher, because they bought it. They specifically know what they want from it, and the direction that they want to take it, and that comes into marketing, sales, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of beyond the agent then. We don't have a massive say in how that sort of flows. So I think it's important to remember that. So when we're in the throuple, maybe it might be a better way to put that. I often have the author come back to me and say, oh, the publisher sort of said this, what are your thoughts? Or this is where the publisher wants to take this section. How do you feel about what I've written here? So I'm still absolutely on the team and giving advice and supporting the author through that process. But it is a little bit of the publisher takes the reins at that point, because they're the ones who are going to sell this book. They know exactly what they want from it.
Last question. It's just a nice serious one as well, so we can finish on a serious note. I heard a rumor that Australian fantasy sci-fi authors generally find it difficult to get an agent in Australia, and then they look overseas to get an agent, often in the US. So when would it make sense to seek an overseas agent, or is there just no difference?
Well, another deep question for rapid fire. We could spend hours on this one as well. I guess like fantasy and sci-fi, that is changing a little bit, because there was definitely a time when, America is huge sellers in those genres, whereas Australia is a little bit more tame, but it is starting to build now. So for me, I guess if your book is based in Australia, it's got Australian characters, it's got an Australian setting, then going overseas for an agent for that is probably a stretch. In the fantasy realm, it is a little bit different, because fantasy generally has an entirely different world, galaxy, universe, whatever the case is. So it can work globally. It doesn't have to have an Australian agent. So that certainly open to that. I know a couple of really good friends who are authors who have done just that. Which is totally fine. For those more Australian, maybe it's just straight commercial or, crime, that kind of stuff, it is a bit more of a stretch. We do have one agent, Martin Shaw, who's based in Germany, but who works very closely with the Australian market still. But generally speaking, look, I think a lot of authors as well, from the conversations I've had, who have had international agents, they do enjoy having someone here on the ground, and that might be, going to writers' festivals and talking to the directors of those festivals, and like I think there's just a lot to be said for having your agent here on the ground in Australia. That's just, that's not me trying to talk up Australian agents over overseas, but that's just kind of what I've been hearing about, in that context. So, at Zeitgeist, we work across regions. So we've got our Sydney office, obviously. Then we've got one in Brussels. We've got one in London. So we kind of are that package where we take on an author and we give them the international agents as well. But yeah, for things like fantasy and sci-fi, I do get it, and I'm probably learning a little bit more in that field as well as to how maybe US agents can help those particular writers more so than maybe ours. But yeah, it's an interesting question, and for rapid fire, I might wrap it up there.
That's great. And I've actually heard too that a lot of authors, we get excited about international rights and sales. And, if our book sells overseas, we think, oh, yes, we've made it. But in reality, for most Australian published writers, the Australian market is always going to be their biggest market.
Definitely. That's 100% the case. And the UK is notoriously hard to get into for an Australian writer. Other parts of Europe, Italy, France, Germany, far more accessible. But yeah, Australian writers can do really well in Australia. There are countless names of authors, Trent Dalton, extraordinary in Australia. I haven't looked at his international sales, but I would imagine like he's big here and has made his work known in Australia. I can't imagine he's gone internationally too hard. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic. We'll have to do it for another podcast.
Yeah, we weren't very rapid with our rapid fires.
I didn't think we would be.
That's probably just me rambling on. Sorry about that.
No,
we often, it's us too. We often find it hard to keep it short because there's so much to talk about and it's just so interesting. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all your insights.
Oh, pleasure.
All right. So I think you've given us so many tips, but normally our last ever question, and this one you can ramble if you wish, is your top tip for aspiring and emerging writers?
Yeah, so I've listened to the podcast and I've listened to all the episodes so far, and so I knew this one was coming. And I found it hard to sort of come down with a top tip, singular. But I've got a few pieces of advice, so bear with me. But I think one of the main ones is don't send anything out before it's ready, and we've kind of covered that. But essentially, it's not always the case, but often you've got one shot when you approach a publisher or an agent with an idea. And if it's half-baked, then you might find, you've burnt those bridges and it's hard to get it back in front of those right people again. I also think immerse yourself in the industry. If you're really keen to be a writer, you've got to immerse yourself in the industry. Go to writers' festivals, little plug for Good Reading Magazine, subscribe to it, look at, read the reviews, what's happening in the industry, what's being well received, what's not. Read those reviews, do short courses. Like I've done some short courses with the Australian Writers Centre, which were fantastic. All through my master's and my PhD, I was just smashing out short courses. And obviously, it's the one that gets said often, but I still have authors coming to me with ideas and I say, have you read this? Have you read that? Have you read that in their particular genre? And they haven't. And you're like, these are the big writers. You've got to read it and you've got to understand it and you've got to see what they're doing well to be able to then have a crack at it yourself. So I think read is my last piece of advice there.
Awesome.
Awesome tips.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Samuel, so much for joining us on the Book Deal podcast.
It's been a pleasure. I look forward to listening to all other episodes except for this one. I just cannot go back through the Granddad's Balls again. Like let's be real.
It's going to be a feature, everybody.
It's preserved for all time.
I still cannot believe it. Like I said it at the Brisbane Writers Festival. I regretted it, and I've just said it again.
And it's
You've just-
immortalized now.
Yeah, you've got to own it now, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Samuel.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Book Deal podcast. We're able to bring you these weekly writerly chats because of our amazing patrons. Join the TPD family by becoming a member of our Patreon community at patreon.com/the Book Deal podcast. And if you love the pod, please give us a rating or review. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook.